Welcome to Back from the Abyss. I'm Dr. Craig Heacock. Today is Fishbowl 5. Today is the end of season 5, and I'm sitting here with my co-conspirator, my good friend, my sound guy, my music guy, my main man, Chris Johnson.
Hi, Craig.
It's good to be here.
It's good to be here.
Yeah. I was just thinking, before we started recording, I was thinking of some memories. 5 years ago, sitting in your basement, and I said something like, hey, can you figure out what kind of music stuff we need to get? And I think you said something like, well, do you have any ideas of stories? And I said, I have 3 ideas. And so I think I told you the first, which became the first 3 episodes of Back from the Abyss. And you said something like, do you have any ideas beyond that? And I said, no, but...
Don't worry.
Don't worry. I think it was at the end of season 1, you said something like, are you out of ideas yet? Yeah.
Still no.
I have a memo on my iPhone filled with ideas. So many ideas.
Okay.
And then I think listeners maybe know this from Fishbowl 2, that Back from the Abyss almost ended at the end of season 2. Do you remember that?
I do remember that.
Yeah. We went out for beers, and basically, I think it was just, you were going to break up with me.
I was having a hard time at that time. Mm-hmm. I think I was maybe going to break up with you. Mm-hmm. It was hard. That was a weird time. That was the most nervous I've been to go get beers with another guy in a long time.
I know. I remember sitting outside with you, and basically my memory was you said, I think I'm out. You can find someone else to do what I do. It's not hard. But I'm not going to do this anymore. And I said, if you're not doing it, I'm not doing it.
I was having a hard time listening to the stories that we were doing in season 1 and season 2 were story heavy, mm-hmm. and heavy, emotionally heavy. Mm-hmm. And I'm not trained. I wasn't trained to listen to some of those stories. And I think that was that COVID year also?
Yeah, the second year was when COVID was intense. Yeah.
Yeah, so there was a lot going on there, and it was hard to be motivated, I think. I was having a hard time being motivated.
Yeah. I think part of it, too, was season 2, we got to spend almost no time together. And part of what's been fun is that not only do we talk all the time, but we see each other, we get together, we laugh, we interact. And with COVID, we had very little interaction. And so... Right, like one of the most fun parts of the podcast wasn't happening.
I think also that as the years have gone by, it's become more fun because there's more to talk about, and we're used to a lot of what we do and comfortable with it, which frees us up to have a sense of humor about things that maybe we didn't in the first couple seasons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, the whole first episode probably needs a trigger warning. We'll talk about trigger warnings later. But yeah, I think, I just wanted to dive so deep and just let people know, like, this is how dark it can get. That season 1 was, heavy. Well, not that it's light now. This season has had incest, a murder, dog abuse, pet abuse, horse abuse.
Yeah.
A lot. Yeah.
Every season has its dark times.
Yeah. Well, what about this season 5? I'm wondering, I have some ideas, but I'm wondering, Chris, what do you think maybe has gotten better? I mean, I hope we're getting better.
I don't know if we're getting better. It feels more comfortable, like I said. I think between you and I, the things that are better is that we're working ahead, mm-hmm. which seems to always be something that we talk about in these fishbowls. It's easier to be creative, I think, when you're not under pressure, maybe. Mm-hmm. Maybe, although sometimes that helps too. I don't know, but it's nice to be working ahead, and I feel like that's gotten much better.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if this is possible because the music has been so good, but I really think season 5 has reached a new level with the music in terms of how it hangs together, how it has sort of a thematic tie, how it just invariably, inevitably comes at just the right time and holds space for whatever's happening in the episode.
I hope so.
Yeah, it's definitely true. Another thing, listeners, that's been a huge change this season is season 1 through 4. The way we did it was I would do most of the content editing. So we had the raw file, and I would go through and cut a lot of the content to sort of hone the story down, to kind of sculpt it down to where we wanted it. And then Chris would do kind of the fine edits, I'll clean it all up, do the sound, add the music. But the beginning of this season, I asked Chris if he would essentially take over all the editing. And I think you were a little apprehensive
Nervous
about that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely nervous.
Yeah. What were you most nervous
Well,
about?
partially because I'm not in any of the interviews. When we first started this, for a while I was sitting in to assist in the engineering part. And then once you figured out that that wasn't too tough, I've no longer, that only lasted 2 or 3 episodes maybe. So I'm not there, and having to edit and cut things out without knowing exactly what went on or the tone maybe. I was nervous about that. It turns out that it hasn't been as hard as I thought it was going to be.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I have realized this season that when I give you the raw file, I need to actually tell you kind of what the story is about and how I'm going to contextualize it and kind of where I'm going with the intro and conclusion. Because there have been a number of times where you listen to the raw file and you said, like, what is this story? Like, where are you going? Or what is happening with this? But I had already known that. But again, I was the one who kind of put it together with the storyteller and sat down and recorded it.
Right. And sometimes it doesn't always sound like that at first because of the way conversation ebbs and flows. Mm-hmm. So it is important for me to, and I'm sure before you go into these, you already know sort of how you want it to go. Mm-hmm. And, when you mentioned fine editing the way we were doing it in the first 4 seasons, I'm doing that sort of simultaneously as I'm trying to do the big edits. Mm-hmm. And so I'm listening to the small things, the vocal quality, as well as how the story is being crafted, and where the breaks should be or are naturally. Mm-hmm. And as I do that, sometimes I'll get a third of the way through and call you and say, okay, what's happening right now?
What is this? Yeah, and editing is a big part of what we do. And I think anyone who has worked with storytelling or film or just, writing knows that editing is such a crucial part of this. And, some of our raw recordings we'll end up cutting 3-4 minutes. Some of our raw recordings will cut an hour.
Yeah.
So, I mean, sometimes the recorded story is like a kind of a raw block of marble that still needs a lot of.
And sometimes we cut things that are good, they just don't fit in the right spot, which we're going to touch on later.
Yeah,
I think.
We're going to get to that. Yeah. Have you liked this, taking over the editing? I mean, this is way more hours of work. It's a much bigger editing challenge. I mean, so much of the end product is your hands are all over it. I
enjoy it. I like it because you're typically happy with the end product, which is nice. Sometimes there are times that I'm unsure if I should be cutting things, so I get a little in my head about that, and it can go slow for a while. It's funny, there was an episode, one of the last ones of this season, that I was editing and I was getting in the weeds and I thought, what am I doing? I'm just making a mess of all this. And when I took out the last little piece and it all went back together, I thought, oh my gosh, this is exactly what it should be. Mm-hmm. So it's a challenge. I've said it all along that your ability to do that it's admirable.
Thank you.
I mean, it really, editing is the key.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love when I'm recording somebody telling their story and we're getting near what I think is the end, and then they like wrap up an anecdote or some emotional thing and they'll say a line, and I just think, that's it. And even if they go 10, 15, 20 more minutes, I think, no, we found the end. And I can even imagine it's kind of the music you're going to put there.
Yeah.
Yeah, love that.
I think that's also something that's happened over time, is that we both have an ability now to hear. I think it's like a musician who can start to hear what they're playing before they play it, or know in their head. That's always fascinated me. But as we're talking today, I think we're getting to that point where even with the raw stuff, we're able to hear an end product ahead of time.
Yeah, I think you're right. On my end, the last few seasons, I think I was probably spending 4 to 6 hours per episode on content editing. Mm-hmm. And now that you're doing that, that's freed up quite a few hours a month that mostly I'm doing mentoring and consulting with those hours. So that's been so fun. So it's like the podcast quality is as good as ever. So you're doing such wonderful work, and yet it's freed up more time for me to do mentoring, which has been so great.
Yeah.
So thank
I
you.
think it's working.
Yeah.
My pleasure.
I wanted to, you and I talk a lot about anxiety. You're always saying we should do more episodes on anxiety. I'm wondering, Mr. Johnson, what are the top 3 things that you worry about?
You know, when we sort of talked about questions that we might be discussing today, and this one came up, and I have talked to several people about this question because it's, you know, are we talking about what we worry about temporarily, you know, or are these big worries? I went with more big worries than the day-to-day kind of stuff. I was happy to, as I've thought about it, realize that I'm privileged enough or happy enough in my life right now that I don't worry about a lot of little things, which I'm lucky. I think, you know, I don't have to worry about probably some of the things that all of our therapist friends hear about in their work a lot, whether it's their marriage or finances or that kind of stuff. So my worries are, I went with a worry that pertains to me first, and that is aging well. And by that, I mean, I'm starting to be, you know, I have an aging parent, I have aging in-laws. I think that where we are in life, we see that happening, and it causes me to think, what am I going to do? Am I behind the curve taking care of my physical and mental health so that I can live the best years possible from here on out?
Yeah.
So I worry about that a little bit. I worry about my kids' place in today's world, landscape. And by that, I mean, there are things that I see that I worry about somewhat, but I don't, because of my age, I don't worry about them as much for me, but I do worry about them for my kids.
Yeah.
And we don't have to go into a ton of details. I think most people can imagine, you know, sort of the things that I'm talking about, whether or not it's politics or economics or climate or that kind of stuff. And then the last thing I worry about is, and this is going to sound a chaos. I talked back and forth about this with some people, but it boils down to a chaotic death. I've decided that it's not that I fear flying per se. It's that I fear dying screaming all the way to the ground.
But it would be quick.
No, it wouldn't be quick. That's the problem, is that it would be painfully slow. And the same thing with, like, you know, if society were to fall apart, I don't worry necessarily about that as much as I worry about the chaotic end of times.
Wow. So that's interesting. Of my top worries, maybe I'll just take over because that totally ties in. I hope for a quick death, but because I work with, I'm a physician, I work with all sorts of awful things. I see a lot of people with degenerative neurological diseases. So I have to say, I probably spend an inordinate amount of time worrying that I'm going to get some degenerative neurological disease. I was playing pickleball the other day, and I couldn't serve, which is, you know, I could never serve. And I was thinking, I probably have Parkinson's.
Oh my God.
Or I thought maybe early ALS. And then I thought, no, this is probably early Alzheimer's because my sense of smell is not very good. And then I thought, I'm such a hypochondriac. What am I doing? But I do, like, where I'm running and I'll fall and I think, this is it. This is the beginning of the end of my neurological hell. So I do probably.
That also ties into aging well.
Yeah.
Those.
See, I would choose plunging to the ground in a 737 way over a degenerative neurological disease.
Well, okay. Push comes to shove, I probably would too.
Yeah. Yeah. I would say the number one thing, though, that I don't know if worry is the right word, but the number one thing that I'm preoccupied with is death. And it's more of like, I'm remembering that quote, I think it was maybe Yalom, who said, death will destroy us, but the idea of death can save us. So I'm always thinking about my death, my pet's death, my kid's death, the world's death, my friend's death. But I try to think about it in a way like, am I living the kind of life I want to live, given that I'm going to die? Am I appreciating my pets, knowing that they're going to die? Am I good with my kids? Am I being a good dad? Am I being a good physician? Am I being a good friend? And so this kind of sounds like perfectionistic crazy town, but it's actually motivating, and it kind of ties in. I think you know this, Chris. One of my most favorite places to run is the graveyard at City Park in Fort Collins, and it's a mile loop, and it's dirt, and I love to run around the gravestones because I just find it so meditative, and I'll often stop and stretch and look at when people died, and I'll think about how was their life, what did they die of, did they live the kind of life they wanted to live, and then I'll do almost like a grateful stretch meditation, like I'm running, I'm alive, I'm breathing, and then I'll run, do some more sprints, and then I'll stop, I'll look at another gravestone. So,
that does not sound so much like a worry.
No, but it's not. But I think about death probably 175 times a day. But then, like as I said, if I have any weird physical stuff, I'm like, oh, here it is. This is the beginning. This is the beginning of my.
Were you always like that? Because
No.
I have that. I think I've got some of that going on.
Yeah.
Rachel, my wife, would definitely say that I'm a hypochondriac.
Yeah.
And I, in the past, have worried about that. And I think that's some of the cause of some anxiety as a weird biofeedback loop that I get, where if it's a day full of pollen here and I all of a sudden feel heavy breathing, instead of thinking, oh, it's a pollen day, I think, oh my God, this is it. This is the start of something horrible.
Yeah. I used to, earlier in my life, and I've talked about this on the podcast before, I spent so much time worrying something horrible that's going to happen, like something horrible is going to happen to my family, or my patients, when's the next suicide? And then I really came to peace, and I think it maybe was when I went to rehab, that bad stuff is coming. And you just, like, the more you can accept it and just own it, just like, yes, we're all going to lose everything we've ever known and loved. So you better start living now.
Yeah.
Like, you better enjoy the sunset now. You better enjoy that burrito now. You better give Chris a hug now. Like, this is it. Like, this is what we got, and it's amazing.
Yeah.
So again, I kind of see my obsession with death as sort of a motivator and a gratitude giver.
That's very much like you. We took off the Enneagram conversation that we thought we might talk about, but isn't that very much a, what are you, a 7? Isn't that a very much a 7?
Yeah.
Optimistic?
Right.
All right, let's not go down that.
Okay, we're not going to go Enneagram.
Okay.
We're going to stay out of that.
Although I am an 8, just in case anyone was wondering.
Yeah. Oh, Chris, I think you wanted to ask me a question about how these last 5 seasons of the podcast may have sort of changed or shaped me. Or something like that.
So this ties into mental health, actually, your mental health, because 5 years ago, I remember distinctly one of the reasons that you wanted to do this podcast was to help you maybe see the brighter side of what you do. I think you were struggling a little bit with some of the darker elements of your job, and telling these stories was a way to not just shine a light on it for other people, but also to help you cope with some of those elements of your job. Mm-hmm. So the question is, has it worked? And if so, how?
Yeah. It's definitely worked. And you are right. 5-6 years ago, before this podcast, I still love my work. I love my patients, but I was definitely marinated in sad. I would say I was, and for those people who know me, I'm a very happy, almost delusionally optimistic person, but I'd say I had become filled up with sad and also filled up with lonely, which is weird because I have very close friends and I'm very connected, but in my work, I felt so alone. I did episode, I think it was season 2, the one Craig plays goalie, where I talked about my sense of being all alone in the goal and just being shellacked with these powerful shots and having nobody to help me. Mm-hmm. But I think one of the biggest gifts of Back from the Abyss, and I've mentioned this before, is I have gotten so deeply connected to so many people because of this podcast, which is weird because, again, when you and I were thinking of this in your basement, and I think I would have thought, well, Chris and I are going to get to be closer friends, which is true. You and I are very, very close now. But I have gotten connected to people all over. I mean, literally over the world. I have people, and these are some people who've been on the podcast or listeners who have reached out who have now struck up friendships. I mean, it's crazy, my network of people that have come specifically because of Back from the Abyss. So I think I still hold a lot of sad, but also I'm filled up with tons of love. So in a lot of ways, I think the 5 seasons from Back from the Abyss have just filled me up with connection and love.
It's fantastic.
So
I love that.
Yeah, so thank you, everyone. What a gift. I know when people are always asking me, how are you going to monetize Back from the Abyss? I tell them, it is super money. Like, it is filling me up with so much.
Right.
And we don't need to have ads where I say, oh, Athletic Greens, put these in your whatever.
I am glad that we don't have
Me too.
weird ads on the podcast.
Yeah, I know. Me too. Should we move on to listener questions?
Sure. Yeah,
Okay.
let's talk about some listener questions.
So, yeah, we got a number of interesting inquiries from folks. This one came from Antonio Sacri, who is Back from the Abyss super fan, and he's a super fan of yours. Like
I love all of the emails that you forward from Antonio.
Yeah, and he's given, I've talked about this before, he's given us such, not just positive, but really constructive feedback. But anyway, Antonio asked, how do you choose the music for the episodes? And the funny thing is, we've been working together for 5 years, and I don't even really know. And I had said, let's talk about this, Chris, and you said, no, nobody wants to hear how I pick the music. And I said, well, actually, I think they do, because it's anybody who loves Back from the Abyss has to love the music, because it's the undergirding of everything. So maybe you could just run us through that process. So you edit the raw file, you've got it honed down to like, okay, here's a story, and I know what Craig wants to do with the intro and conclusion. Then what?
So I break the story up into what you and I often refer to as chapters, which they're not really chapters, but they're chunks, thematic chunks. And I'll mark those in the file, and then usually I'll step away. That's once I get to that point, then I'm comfortable with that part of the process being done. And then when I come back, what I'll do is I'll either make notes about what a chunk is about, or often I'll just back up before a break and listen with headphones on generally, and try to just be in the moment of the conversation. And typically it strikes me in some way. I cheat a little bit in that we use a library. We subscribe to a library of music, you do, that has a huge catalog of music that is free of any copyright infringements. Musicians are posting or maybe selling music to these companies specifically for this kind of use, which was a huge leap forward in what I do. Because before, in the first and second season, I was going through and downloading little beeps and blips and, trying to put together something from free stuff.
Yeah.
But once we got this catalog of music, there's a bunch of ways to search for it. And so I know enough about music, so let's say there's a sad part. I will, maybe look for something in a minor key, something that leads in slow or has a drop or has, it's very hard. I just listen to little bits of music until I find something. Although I will say that when I'm doing this, the challenges that I learned after maybe the first or second season is that when I first started doing it, the temptation was to lay it on thick. And that actually distracts. I didn't like the work that if I do that, then I think, oh, I don't need, most of these moments don't need extra. They just need a little something. Mm-hmm. And so I'll put music in and then listen back. And if it makes me feel good about it or tear up, I know I've done a good job. Mm. A lot of times I'll make myself emotional about, with the music, because it's just amazing how the music takes some of these stories and just, I don't know, elevates it just a little bit.
Yeah.
Or helps you be at ease with what's happened, whether it's a happy something that's happened or a scary thing or a sad thing. So anyway.
Yeah. And I love how it gives space to feel. Because, normally when we're hearing a good story or captivating whatever, it just keeps coming. Maybe the storyteller will take a pause. But, some of the music breaks in Back from the Abyss are like 20, 30 seconds. Mm-hmm. And it's just time to just sort of just sit with it. Just think like what was just said and just stay with it.
I learned that after the first season or two also, is that the sitting with it and not being afraid to put in a few extra seconds.
Mm-hmm. I think it's perfect. Yeah. So do you have like a whole bunch of clips already picked out that you've already mined, like thinking like these are going to be good for future episodes, or for each episode do you go fishing?
Each episode I go and start fresh. Mm. I will flag songs that I like, maybe for future, even if they aren't going to work in the current episode. Oh, that's the other thing, is that once I find a song, I mark it in the file so that when I go back and put these in, the music is very specific to a break in the story. Like, I don't find seven songs that I think would work anywhere in the story. They're very specific to the break.
Yeah. How long does it take for the typical story? I know the stories are all different, but you say a typical hour-long story. What your process of searching for music, clipping it, placing it, equalizing it? What does that take?
I sent you some stats about. I actually looked this year to see what the average time was, and I think that the average time was 2.5 hours maybe per episode. But that includes de-umming people. Including myself in this very episode, unfortunately.
I would never say Well, yeah, okay, I would.
Taking out clicks and ticks and air conditioner hums and, big chunks and little chunks and all that, and the music. So I don't know. Putting the music in does not take long. Picking the music out, I sometimes get in my head and it takes longer than I would like.
Yeah. We had another listener write to me very, very upset about the Jenny MDMA episode. She was very positive about it, but she said, how could you have published that without a trigger warning? She said, when I got to the big reveal, and I won't say what the big reveal for those of you who haven't listened, she said it was actually damaging for her. So I think she brought up an interesting point about trigger warnings. Now, there's been a couple episodes where I did put a warning. I try to always put in the show description kind of what it's about.
Right.
But I thought she brought up an interesting point, and I was kind of torn because part of me thinks, look, Back from the Abyss, like, this is not Pod Save America. This is a podcast about suicide and incest and addiction and horrible, hard stuff.
Right.
So if you're in on this, maybe you don't need a trigger warning. But then I also felt really badly knowing that, of course, being in this work, that certain kinds of trauma, certain kinds of things are going to hit people like a gut punch.
Yeah, I think I'm a bad person to talk to about this, because I as a Gen X person, swing back. My kids will lecture me about some of this stuff. The cynical part of me would say, well, every episode we do could be triggering to somebody. Mm-hmm. Which, by that logic, we would have to put a trigger warning on every episode, which is sort of the point you're making, is that the podcast in general can be triggering.
Yeah.
The subject matter.
Yeah, it's kind of R-rated.
It's kind of R-rated. Now, having said that, there's been times, I think, that I've specifically said to you, should we be putting a trigger warning on this thing? And I do recognize that in some cases, some of these topics are probably more sensitive than others.
I'm guessing some listeners are maybe wondering why I did a trigger warning on the last story of the season, the Christina episode. So I did a trigger warning about animal abuse. And I guess the reason I did that, one is because this listener letter was fresh in my mind. But the second was each time I heard that story, when I heard the part about not just the animals dying, but where Christina said it takes a lot to kill a horse.
Yes.
I remember you and I talked about, should we cut that? Because
Yes.
that's so brutal. But then I said, no. Like that statement sums up the horror of it. Like
Right.
what kind of neglect it takes to kill a horse. But I also know that there are people, because I work with a lot of these people, there are people for whom their animals are literally their family.
Yes.
So I just anticipated that if I didn't, again, maybe I'm wrong, but if I hadn't put a warning there, that I really might have shocked a bunch of people. So I would be curious, listeners, anybody helped by that animal trigger warning? Or anyway, I know this is a complicated issue, and the last thing I want to do is cause harm to any of you or traumatize any of you. And that said, I also want to treat you all with respect and let you decide if this kind of material is right for you.
Yeah. Did you mentioned that maybe you did some research on trigger warnings in general? Because what did you find out?
Well, this seems interesting, but yeah, I found some research that suggested that when you put a trigger warning on something, it tends to draw people in. It's like the alley. Don't come down this alley.
Yeah, but does it draw the people in that might be triggered, or does it draw the people in who aren't triggered that just want something juicy?
I don't know. Yeah. But that said, in the future, I will continue to try to be mindful. Again, if you have concerns that the episodes are hard, look in the show description. I try to give a pretty good indication of where things are headed. We had another question about, actually, this relates to something that's happened every season. Had a listener write a few days ago and said, I love the Christina episode, the most recent one, but what happened to her mom and what happened to the brother?
Yeah, it wasn't my wife, was it?
No. But I thought she brings up such a good point, and I wanted to talk about this, Chris, is that you and I, in many episodes, have had to cut really important stuff that just doesn't fit the flow of the story.
Yeah, so I'm going to take complete responsibility for this particular instance because you and Christina discussed this specifically, but it was like a 2-minute discussion out of order of the story. And, one of the things that I think both of us look to do is to make sure that the story flows and isn't confusing to listen to. Not that it would be hugely confusing, but it would be a little backtrack, jump forward, jump back, come back to another point. And I made the decision, I did ask you, but it was me that cut that, thinking that it just didn't fit where it was happening, and I couldn't figure out a way to move it to where it made sense. Mm-hmm. And this actually brings up something that right before we started recording that we talked about. We're going to get to some of the things that maybe in season 6 we're going to try to do, but this has come up before where we've cut things or there's been questions that leave people hanging or parts of stories that leave people hanging. Maybe we can try to anticipate those a little better, and you could make a mention if we think of them in the conclusion.
Yeah, that's a good thought. Yeah, but I do think, one of the most fascinating stories, or one of the most fascinating challenges with crafting a story is the crafting. And, any of us, like if we had the Chris Johnson podcast telling your quote unquote story or my quote unquote story, that could be 20 hours. So one of the things I'm always doing with storytellers is like, let's hone down your story. What's the story you want to tell? How am I going to contextualize this in a way that makes sense with podcast? And, again, if a story is a tree, a lot of what you and I are doing and what I'm trying to do with the storytellers before is like lop limbs off. Like, no, not that limb, not this limb. And, I'm reminded of one of the stories this season. It was a trauma story, and the woman had an unbelievable trauma. And what you and I know is that that's not even her worst trauma. Her worst life trauma is way worse. In fact, it's so awful that we left it out because she and I both agreed that it would totally derail the story and take it somewhere else.
Right.
So I think that's really ironic that one of the most powerful trauma stories of the season, the biggest trauma, we left out. But I think it's a much better story and a
much better,
much more effective message by doing that.
Right.
Yeah. Let's see. Oh, we had one listener. Actually, we've had a couple listeners ask, a couple therapists who are both new therapists, and they asked, there's over 100 episodes of Back from the Abyss. We love this, but we're getting started. Could you give us a recommended kind of sampler plate, best of 5 episodes for therapists? Mm-hmm. So Fishbowl 3 listeners may remember the big reveal when we did our listener survey, and you and I found out that our modal listener is
our wives.
Our wives, 50-something master's level therapist woman. Mm-hmm. So I was going to do this question, but I thought my wife, Enneagram 8, she will have opinions. She's a kick-ass therapist. So I asked her for her, and she's listened to all of them, religiously. I said, Elizabeth, what are the best episodes for therapists? So she gave me 4. So she gave me 3 episodes from season 3. She said, the best episodes for therapists to start with: Hold On to Memories, the Doug Friedman suicide episode. Mm-hmm. That episode
was great.
Oh, yeah.
Heavy.
Doing the Loving Thing, an exploration of marriage with Jeff Pincus, also season 3. And then the 20 years in psychiatry, my insights in clinical pearls. Mm-hmm. And then she also added from this season, ketamine 3,000 sessions. So she gave 4. I asked her for 5. She said, those are the best 4 for therapists. I want to add, I'm going to take podcaster privilege here. I'm going to add one more to make it 5. The Adele LaFrance episode from this year, Love and Therapy.
I love that.
Yeah. I mean, if you're a therapist, you have to listen to Love and Therapy. But if you're a Back from the Abyss listener, you better have heard that episode because it is just shockingly beautiful.
I agree. It was one of my favorites.
Let's see, we have another listener question. Chris Craig, what are your favorite 2 or 3 podcasts? What are you guys reading now?
Okay. You want me to go first?
Yeah, why don't you start?
Okay. So I'm not nearly as big of a podcast listener as you are, primarily because I work from home now, and so I don't have a commute. But when I do get in the car, the 3 that I've been listening to consistently lately, the first one is called Handsome, which is a comedy podcast with Tig Notaro, Fortune Feimster, and Mae Martin. Mm. And it is hilarious. The next one is also a comedy podcast called Off Menu. It is a podcast by these 2 British guys. Essentially, the concept there is they have guests on, and they have the guests tell them their perfect menu, and they start by asking them flat or still water. Do you want bread? What kind of bread? What would be your appetizer? And as part of the backdrop, then you learn all kinds of fun things. They have this great little conversations about the restaurants they've been in or the family that taught them to cook, or, it's just a super fun. And it's hosted by these funny guys, so it's very good. Mm. And then my standard is This American Life, which I just can't seem to find something that I like better.
Yeah.
What about you? Podcasts?
Gosh, there's so many, but I'd say top 3 that I'm just loving. Well, of course, Sam Harris, Making Sense, just completely. That's really changed my life, so many parts of that podcast. The second is Ezra Klein. Oh. And I do not like listening to politics at all. In fact, that's one of the things I'd say that really negative affects my mental health. So I don't really listen to too many of the politics episodes, but Ezra Klein is the most masterful interviewer I think I've ever heard.
Really?
He is just, I have a huge podcaster crush on him. It doesn't matter who he's talking to, philosopher, author, poet, head of state.
I thought it was all politics, but it's
no, it's an amazing one.
Oh.
And another one I've really been loving is a storytelling podcast. It's called The Nocturnus. I've mentioned it on here before. It's about medicine. It's mostly doctors telling their stories. So it starts with a story, and then it starts with kind of a meta breakdown where the host and the doc kind of go through the why of the story and the backstory. Cool. Yeah, it's really beautiful.
Sounds right up your alley.
And then what am I reading? I'll say, and then fire it back to you, Chris. I know you read way more than me. I read The New Yorker obsessively. I love The New Yorker. I love it. And that's kind of at least a halftime job because it's weekly and there's, the typical New Yorker articles.
My mom reads The New Yorker.
Yeah.
Too.
It's just like some of the most fascinating things I've learned in the last 10 years come from The New Yorker. I mean, the typical New Yorker story, I'll pick it up like, this doesn't look that interesting, but I know, it's fascinating. Whether it's a history of knife sharpening, which is actually a real story I read, or some obscure director. It doesn't matter. Like if it's in The New Yorker, it's going to be just...
you say you don't read much, but just to get through one article in The New Yorker, you start down that knife sharpening article, and it turns out to be like 7 pages in small print.
Okay, so I read like 5 novellas a week.
Yeah,
like The New Yorker.
Yeah.
How about you?
What, do you have more than that, or is that it?
I mean, that's the number one thing. I love the Atlantic, the electronic version of the Atlantic, but I read The New Yorker first.
Okay.
Yeah, the New Yorker comes out Sunday night. Can't wait. I try not to read the first one late at night because I got to get rested, but some epic 30-page investigative article comes out. So they're late at night reading The New Yorker. Like, gosh, I love this.
Yeah, good. I make it through the first 5 pages of those things, and then I'm like, are we good? But I've never been a great nonfiction reader. So, all right, I have been reading. I'm in a book club. I've been in a book club with the same people for over 20 years. We are... And
do you actually talk about books or you just drink
very
wine?
Rarely.
Yeah.
We occasionally will talk about the book, but we get together, and we've done it. The reason we've been able to stay together for so long is that we meet once every 3 months. We're not a monthly book club, so it gives us time. We're all slow readers, or we're reading other things, which typically happens. But anyway, I'm reading my book club book right now. It's called Homecoming by Kate Morton. It's a historical mystery set in Australia. Before that, I read a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear, which is a nonfiction book. I was wanting to learn how to follow through better on some things, and that has been a help. I really actually enjoyed that book. I read another nonfiction book that ties into what we were talking about earlier called The In-Between by Hadley Valos. She's a hospice nurse. It is stories. Apparently, she's also a TikTok, Instagram hospice nurse, which seems
like an oxymoron.
Yeah, she's young and went right into this. The book is, each chapter is about a patient of hers and the relationship she had with them and the circumstances of the person passing. And I found it oddly comforting for a bunch of reasons. I'd recommend it. I'd recommend it to you, given what you were saying earlier. Mm-hmm. It's a very quick read, and it's a feel good. It's a feel good book, I would say. So
I really like novels, but I probably only finish a third of the novels I start because if I'm not just gripped by it, if I don't think this is great, I'm done. I'm like going to go back to the New Yorker.
It's so funny how different people have, and I'm almost the opposite. I mean, I also have to be entertained by a book, but I find it easier to be gripped by a novel than I do a lot of times by nonfiction. Mm. Although that's changing as I've gotten older. It depends on the books. So anyway.
How about this? Let's see. Chris and Craig, what are you going to do with your time away from the podcast this summer?
Well, I can speak for both of us, and then we got a couple big events out of the way already this year, and that is our youngest children graduated from college. Mm-hmm. So that was exciting.
Yeah, so between us, we've been to 3 college graduations in the last 12 days.
I think so.
Yeah, my identical twins and your daughter.
Yeah. So that travel has already come and gone. I don't have, as long as there's not a forest fire near Fort Collins is a great place to be in the summertime. We traveled in the spring last year some and then spent all summer around town, and it was great. So that's kind of what we have in store.
Let's see, what am I looking forward to? A couple weeks from now, I'm teaching with Dory Lewis at her ketamine-assisted therapy workshop outside of Boulder. Let's see, the family, we're going on a big trip in July. I think the main thing, the podcast, not doing a podcast this summer, it's going to free up time for me to really do some deep preparation for the psychotherapy intensive training that I'm teaching in October.
Oh, tell us more.
So, yeah, I've mentioned that in the podcast. I'm having 20, mostly nurse practitioners and PAs from all over the country come and do an intensive kind of psychotherapy boot camp intensive with me. Sort of all of the things you didn't learn in grad school, but maybe you should have.
Right.
So we're going to dive deep into how to do therapy in the moment and difficult patients and have a case conference. And so, yeah, I'm so excited about it. So when I'm not reading the New Yorker or at work or talking about the podcast with you, or I'm thinking about this workshop, and yeah, I'm just thrilled.
Are there spots available?
No, it's actually full and has a significant waiting list. But the plan is, if this one goes well, and my goal is to make it amazing.
I'm sure it will.
If it goes well, we'll keep doing it. That I'll have another one maybe next spring, next summer. So.
And is this something that you saw yourself doing before the podcast?
No. So many cool things have come out of the podcast. No, I do consultation and mentoring for psychiatrists, PAs, and psych NPs. And I kept hearing largely from my psych NPs that they really wanted more intensive psychotherapy training. A lot of them are asking me, where do I get more therapy training? How do I learn what I don't know? Like, what do I do? Mm-hmm. And so I was on a run, which is where I do my best thinking. And I thought, I know, I'm going to do it. I'm going to bring in not just the people that I mentor and work with, but open it up to people through the podcast and say, come to Fort Collins and let's do a 3-day psychotherapy boot camp.
Now, you're teaching by example in the podcast, I would say. A lot of people have commented how much they've learned, but have you done teaching in the past?
Yeah, that was my first career. I was a high school teacher.
Yes. You know what? I knew that, but I didn't put that together.
Yeah.
So you have a knack for it.
I think so.
I think so too.
I think it's I have so many things that I'm bad at, but it's true. But one thing I'm really good at is I'm a very good synthesizer, and I'm really good at making complicated topics accessible to people.
Yes.
So I think that helps with teaching.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Let's see. What are you guys planning for season 6?
You're going to have to fill me in on that one. I have a couple technical things that I have in the back of my mind to try to do. One of them is to have some curated lists. Now that we have 5 seasons and over 100 episodes, we're working on a way to categorize and sort those so that we can give people a condensed list if they're interested in a very specific topic without having to scroll around a ton. And I think it's going to be very helpful.
Yeah. Well, that sounds great. I think from my end, well, first of all, I want to say, I know we've said this in Fishbowls before. One of the best ideas either you had or Antonio had was to have seasons. Because, most podcasts don't have seasons, but this is this really beautiful thing that, every summer we take a break, we take some time away, we recharge. I think we both come back more excited in the fall.
For sure.
But I have a huge list of potential topics for season 6 on my phone. I think I have like 45 or 50 potential either guests or story ideas or patients of mine. Yeah. So I think what I'm kind of worried about with season 6 is there's so many potential things. Like I gotta spend some time this summer and really think about what I want to do. And one of the things that happens when you have a podcast that's growing is you get a lot of people writing, and I guess so I get a lot of pitches,
right,
which is sweet, but a lot of the pitches are not that relevant to this sort of tight ship that I'm trying to run with Back from the Abyss, like keeping it really in psychiatry with the stories, with the hope, with the learning. So I'm having to say no a lot. And as an Enneagram 7, I like to say yes. So yeah. So I am going to have to make it.
I think my little spreadsheet exercise might help you out, because one of the things that I noticed just initially in doing that is that you can start to see trends, things that we've had a bunch of, things that we haven't. Yeah, that's exciting to have a bunch of options.
Yeah. I think one thing I might do a little more of next season, which I'm kind of surprised I'm saying this, is I can't remember if I mentioned this on the pod, but a few months ago, I did sort of an informal survey of all the people I mentor and maybe 10 other people I know that are big fans. And the question was, do you like the stories better? Do you like my solo episodes better? Or do you like me talking to experts?
Mm-hmm.
And far and away, the number one choice was stories. But far and away, the second choice, way above the experts, was my solo episodes.
Oh.
So I might do more of those. I always feel a little guilty doing that because I think, okay, this is psychiatry and stories, and here I am just pontificating on all things psychiatry. But we get a lot of good feedback on those. And I'm, again, as a synthesizer, someone who tries to bring big ideas into just digestible chunks, like they're really fun for me to do.
I like them a lot.
So we might be seeing more of those.
I learn a lot, and it's not my profession.
Oh, good.
I have another technical thing that we haven't figured out how it's going to work, but I thought of this in light of a podcast idea that I have of my own, and that is to make use of maybe a phone number to have listeners be able to call in and scrape their messages and incorporate them into the podcast. So in addition to maybe just having letters, we also could see how it might be to have people phone in and ask a specific question or comment on an episode.
Ooh, I like that. But do you think we get some prank calls?
Probably, but they wouldn't be live. So we should be able to handle that. I don't know if that's going to work yet or not. That's just sort of
no. I kind of like that idea. Yeah,
brainstorming idea.
Because there's something really cool about hearing someone's voice. Like it's really fun to read all the letters we get, but to actually hear the emotion and tone to someone's voice. Some podcasts that I've listened to in the past have had a point at the end of the episode where they have just 2 or 3 listener calls that they air. Yeah. That people call in. It was a music podcast, so it was a little different. But the way it was set up was what I liked about it a lot is that it sort of completes the community, the podcast ecosystem. Yeah. Yeah. I guess if nobody calls, I could call the line. I could change my voice.
Hello.
Oh, so what Dr. Heacock said was just astounding. And clearly such a really leading light of psychiatry.
You would never do such a thing. Leave a prank call.
And you just mentioned it. I want to wrap up with this. So 5 years of Back from the Abyss. Woohoo! And Chris has been putting together potentially a new podcast on his end, because as we all know, Chris loves music. When I first met Chris, I remember you said, I like music. That's what I'm into. Right. So maybe I'm curious just a little bit about that process. I've been advising you a little bit, but it's been fun from my end to see you start to sort of think about, again, you've been intimately involved in a podcast for 5 years, but now you're looking at doing something that's just your baby.
Yeah. It's a pro and a con, I would say, to have had the experience that I've had with you over the last 5 seasons, in that I know how much work it is. And I know how much work it is when you split the work, maybe not even evenly, but at least there's some teaming up of work. And right now my idea is just me. So, I'm a little intimidated by the amount of work. And the other part that's intimidating to me is being in the host position. I think that the success of the show. Are you smiling because I just ohmed?
No. Here's why I'm smiling. It's because
I'm already flubbing it up.
It's because you and I have spent so many hundreds of hours listening to, and so here's probably one thing: as you're hosting your new podcast, you will not do that much because you've spent so much time listening to mouth noises that you don't want to hear. So I think you've probably largely.
I say that, and then I come in here on these fishbowls and just make all the noises that I can't stand to have to clean up. But I think it's just the human condition.
I think it is. Yeah.
So I think I have a good idea. I'm nervous about committing, but I'm putting it out here. I put it out with a couple folks already. I'm putting it out here now on the podcast.
Accountability.
It's part of those atomic habits, I think, too. Part of getting into a habit is being accountable. So we'll see. We'll see. Hopefully, in season 6 of Back from the Abyss, we can have an announcement. You can give me a little airtime, tease my new podcast.
Yeah. Well, I feel for you trying to start a new podcast because one thing that's has made Back from the Abyss so much better and so much more fun is that we're doing this together.
Yes.
And, and that our skill sets, you have very separate skills than I do. And again, could I do this alone? I mean, I guess theoretically I could, but it would be a hollow imitation. It would take so much time. There'd be so many things I'd have to learn. Plus I just wouldn't have you to just laugh and,
what are you doing to me right now?
No, I'm saying most people start podcasts alone. So I think it's very impressive and it's harder to do it alone.
Well, the other thing that I've learned with this is not only is it harder to do it alone, but most podcasts fail. Well, I shouldn't say fail. Most podcasts do not achieve the listenership that we have with Back from the Abyss.
Yeah.
You and I have done a little research into, numbers, and there's so many podcasts in the world right now and the majority of them get, maybe 10, 20 listeners an episode.
The median number of downloads for a U.S. podcast, I think it's 28.
28 downloads.
It's the median, yeah.
And when you consider
we get 29, so we're above that.
How many hours, that's like one listener per hour of work.
Yeah. Well, I think that's just such a powerful example of if you're going to do this, you really got to love it. I know you love music. You've been so excited about the story because if you're doing this to get famous or make a bunch of money or talk about athletic greens or it's not going to happen.
No.
But if you want to do something that's meaningful to you, that your heart's in and that you feel like you can really give your all, you're going to find some listeners and hopefully some listeners who think this is cool. This is really cool.
Hopefully.
Yeah. I'll listen.
Thanks, Greg. Okay. That's one listener.
You're like, wait, 28 is the median download. This is Craig. Oh, wait, now Craig drove to Denver and he downloaded it. Oh, wait, now he's in Pueblo.
I try to download my own music, my little recording project. Anytime I go somewhere, I'll stream it once just so when I come home and I fool myself. Last year, I looked at my own Who's Larry, for anyone who's interested. I looked at my listenership, which also is about 3 or 4 monthly listeners. And I thought, oh my gosh, someone's listening from Peru. And I had forgotten that was me.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I guess this is going to wrap up Fishbowl 5. I love Fishbowl. And this is so fun. And again, you and I talk. I don't even know how many hours a month or year we talk about the podcast and other stuff. We're always cracking each other up. And
yeah.
You're one of the funniest people I know. And you and I have often joked we wish some of our phone conversations about the podcast could go in as outtakes because
it could get dangerous.
Yeah. But here's a huge thank you to you for everything you do.
Thank you.
And
thank you,
listeners. Thank you for being part of this. And as I said, you've helped me a lot. Would we still be doing this if we had 28 listeners? I don't think we would. I think the fact that we have many thousands of listeners, it just it fuels it, and all the emails and the notes, and just the fact that we know that Back from the Abyss is reaching people and really changing lives. What's better than that?
Nothing better than that.
Yeah. On that note, my friend, season 5.
In the can.
In the can.